And then, because going live sometimes takes a couple minutes.
Yeah. How's Tucson today?
Toasty.
Is it?
Nice.
Already,
and warm. Yeah.
Yep.
I went out to an event around 10 o'clock and came back, and I need oven mitts for the car. And
All right. The live stream is preparing.
Let's see.
And
on my screen, it says it's now streaming.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
Might be loading on mine. Okay, now it is. Got it. All right. So yeah, I think we will just go ahead and maybe give it a minute or so for people to check their notifications.
Andrea, are you in the at headquarters?
No,
no,
I'm in my office at home.
Okay.
Although I just created the background and I gave it to Miranda just a few minutes ago.
Okay.
So we can match.
Trying to look as official as possible. I like your screen. It's like, look at all that stuff.
It's all our endorsements. So we keep having to add and change.
Very good. Yeah. Chicanos, Por la Causa.
Latino Victory Fund,
Fund,
IBEW, IATSE, AFGE, and then Moms Demand Action.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that'll be something I want to hear you talk about it.
Sure.
So.
Miranda,
Yeah.
so you're also at home, Miranda?
I am, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
All right, so I think we're just going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone here on the webinar, and also everyone on our Facebook page. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We are really excited to present. This is our second to last discussion for Democracy Forum, and this is our Governor Forum. Unfortunately, not all of the candidates could be here today. And so that's why we wanted to make this a virtual forum rather than an in-person forum. We just didn't want to put people at risk if there wasn't going to be more than one person. But yeah, we're really happy and really excited to have our candidate for Governor Marco Lopez here. And so Larry, if you want to go ahead and get started, that would be great.
All right. Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Larry Bodine. I'm the president of Democrats of Greater Tucson, and just delighted to be here hosting a discussion for democracy. And our guest, as you can see, is Marco Lopez. Marco started his political career after he was elected mayor of his hometown, Nogales, Arizona, when he was only 22 years old. And he went on to serve as the director of the Arizona Department of Commerce, and then as a security official for the Obama administration. Since then, Marco has been running his own business, which to date is on track to create 15,000 jobs right here in Arizona to 1 million low-income, and he's brought the internet to 1 million low-income families. And with that, welcome.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Miranda. It's great to be here in a nice, warm Arizona day, Arizona Sunday. I wish I could be down in Tucson with you, but as you mentioned, not all of our candidates believe in that dialogue that strengthens our democracy. As you suggested, Larry, my parents immigrated to Nogales almost 50 years ago. It was that promise of Arizona that brought them here, with a belief that Arizona was a place that if you worked hard, treated people with respect, and were willing to play by the rules, Arizona is a place that they could get ahead. Always insisting in my two sisters and I getting a good education, getting good grades in school. I was the first in our generation to go on to Tucson, to the University of Arizona, where I graduated in 1999, December, and went back to Nogales, where I started my campaign Cinco de Mayo, May 5th of the year 2000, to launch what would become a successful mayoral campaign. I was elected at 22 years old. I was the youngest mayor in the country at that time, and that's where I met Janet Napolitano, who was thinking about running for governor herself. She asked that I help coordinate the border mayors to help in her campaign. all the way from Somerton, San Luis, Yuma, Tucson, Sierra Vista, Bisbee, Tombstone, Douglas, helped coordinate all of us to help her. She got elected. A year later, she asked me to join her administration. I worked my way up to be the director of the Department of Commerce here for the state of Arizona. In 2009, President Obama named me chief of staff at Customs and Border Protection. That's the largest law enforcement and trade agency in the country. Over 60,000 men and women deployed across the world, and a budget of $13.4 billion, always looking out for our nation's safety and security. After 10 years in government, though, I thought that it was important to join the private sector, just like my parents had built their own small businesses 40 years before me. I started the first project was Connect to Compete, that today has connected over 1 million homes in the US, 30,000 of them right here in the state of Arizona. If a child is in the free and reduced lunch program, they get broadband at home for $10 a month. And that program continues to grow. You know, Larry, I was remembering that when we launched that program in 2012, many people would tell us that broadband was a luxury. And what we knew, and what the pandemic has taught us, is that that is a vital resource that allows, in our case of this program, our kids to connect so that the most advantaged child and the least advantaged child has access to the same information online. And out in Mesa, Skybridge, Arizona, I'm the founder of that project, and it's the only international cargo logistics hub that is on track to create 15,000 jobs right around the Gateway Airport area here in the East Valley and in the Phoenix area, Mesa, Arizona. So I started my campaign for governor back March of last year with a belief that if we were going to be a state that people want to move to, invest in, grow at, we have to strengthen our education system. We cannot be a state that continues to be 49th in the country in educational investment and believe that our economy is going to benefit from the kids that graduate from our system, the graduates that come from our community colleges or our universities. So we have to do everything possible to invest in and strengthen our education system. In healthcare, 11% of our population doesn't have access to affordable, quality healthcare. That's 822,000 Arizonans that tonight might go to bed not knowing if tomorrow they'll be able to afford their prescription drug or pay their rent because of their medical costs. That's not a burden that we should be placing on Arizonans. And finally, it is about the economy. And I think we all face it and feel it out and about. If we are going to be a state that's competitive regionally, we have to have a leader that understands how to create jobs in our state. And we have to bring those jobs to each one of our 15 counties and 22 tribes. That's why I'm excited to talk to all of you, or all of my friends in Pima County, a place where I went to school, a part of Southern Arizona that's near and dear to my heart. My two sisters still live in Tucson. My parents are still down there in Nogales. So with that, I look forward to having a lively conversation about the future of Arizona, because that's what's at stake here. We have to make sure that we elect a governor that is going to have the backbone to take on Kari Lake and isn't going to run and hide and isn't going to be afraid of facing and answering the tough questions about the challenges that we all face. Thank you, Larry.
All right, well, thank you. Question I had for you concerns a couple of crises that we have going on right now, and I wanted to find out how you would handle them. The first one being the gun epidemic. It seems we have a mass shooting every other day. There are more guns than people in Arizona. If you want to get a gun, all you need is to be 18 years old and have a pulse. I mean, what would you change?
Yeah, you know, look, Larry, this is an issue that is near and dear to my heart as I look at the images out of Uvalde, Texas, a place that I visited while I was chief of staff, a border town similar to many of our border towns here in Arizona. And so I know that this is an issue that we have to bring people together to help solve. I am blessed to be given the seal of Moms Demand Action for sensible gun reform, because I know that in Arizona specifically, we have to close our gun show loopholes. We have to make sure that people go through the proper checks if they want to purchase a weapon, a gun here in Arizona. We have to institute red flag laws to be sure that if someone is going through an episode, the courts can work with the family of those individuals to remove any dangerous weapons that they might have. And we have to be sure that constantly working on removing and not facilitating the purchase of weapons of war. Look, I led the largest law enforcement agency in the country. As I mentioned, 60,000 men and women deployed throughout the world. And what law enforcement professionals will tell you, and what I will tell you, is that if in any case there's an incident like the ones we've been seeing on TV, 2 of them last night here in Phoenix and then in Mesa. Law enforcement doesn't want to be responding to issues, to incidents where they're going to be outweaponed, outgunned. Weapons of war have no place in civil society. And that's what we've got to make sure. And that's why I'm glad that we are once again pushing to try to eliminate the purchase or the ease of purchase for weapons of war. That's where they belong. They don't belong in our streets. And we've got to do everything possible to push that, Larry. And as governor, I will.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's, it's basically a free-for-all for weapons. Somebody can buy an assault weapon, just like a pack of gum. The other crisis that I wanted you to address is over reproductive freedom. We know that the Supreme Court is seriously considering throwing out Roe v. Wade. And if that happens, the legislature just last month passed a state law that would ban most abortions after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And it would also put into effect an 1800s law that would make giving someone an abortion a felony charge. How can we protect reproductive rights, in this kind of an atmosphere?
Yeah, well, look, reproductive freedoms are under assault, and they're under assault by Republicans across the country. Here in Arizona is no exception. And so as governor, I will be very clear that we're going to stand up for women and their ability to make those decisions. I think the role of government needs to be to protect and expand rights, not take away rights. And reproductive freedom and reproductive rights are the latest under threat by Republicans nationally and here in Arizona. So I will stand up and I will veto any legislation that looks to limit those rights and those freedoms for families and women across this state. Number 2, Larry, I think, and I have signed on to constitutional change so that we can protect, because I don't trust this legislature. I don't trust Arizona Republicans to work with women and work with reasonable, sensible leaders in our state. We have to stand up to them. Trying to believe that they're going to do the right thing while showing us time and time again that they are not is not a good strategy. So this is why I also encourage many of our leaders and community members as I visit the state, is that they also vote for Democrats that are pro-choice up and down the ballot. Because we've got to make sure that we have a working majority leadership at the legislature so that we can try to prevent more bad legislation from occurring in this issue specifically, but gun rights and many other issues that we're going to have to address, funding for schools, water, housing, many, many more issues that I'm sure we're going to go into, Larry. But on this issue specifically, we need fighters. We need people who are going to provide the leadership at the legislature so that we can try to prevent those bills from making it through. But when they do, and if they do, I will be there to firmly veto any further limitations or any limitations on women's reproductive freedoms.
Excellent. Good to hear. I've got kind of a tough question for you, and it has to do with the polls. An Arizona governor poll just came out yesterday, and it showed that Democrat Katie Hobbs is polling at 49%, and you are polling at 20%. What can you do to turn that around? What motivates you to stay in the race?
Well, look, Larry, I think part of the story that I mentioned about my family's path here, the immigrant story, is real as we look at the work, the passion, the commitment that it takes to make sure that we are giving voice to Arizona voters everywhere that they're at. This is why you can see on the screen Now over 62 leaders from throughout the state of Arizona have endorsed our campaign, because this is our campaign that is talking directly to voters, that is grassroots, that is in each one of our 15 counties and 22 tribes, because that's what it takes to win, Larry. So I'm encouraged every single day, because I hear from people about the need for a champion, someone that's going to stand up and fight for them, because our issues are so pressing, Larry. We have to be, and we have to elect leaders that are not going to run and hide from the tough issues that Arizona faces. Look, we know that in order to beat Kari Lake, we're going to need a coalition of diverse voters from throughout the state of Arizona. That includes African Americans, it includes Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, and Pacific Islanders. That's 43% of our population, of our voting population. We need every single one. And I'm the only one building that coalition, Larry, which is no surprise why my opponent, Katie Hobbs, will not go to forums, has failed to confirm her appearance at the PBS debate, because she believes in the comfort of staying in her office instead of listening to voters' questions, answering the tough questions, Larry. If you cannot answer the questions in a friendly audience like this one today, how do you think she's going to answer the tough questions that Kari Lake and Republicans are going to ask of her? And so I am encouraged that we're giving voters the opportunity to have a choice, to make the right choice, so that we don't get someone in there that cannot stand up and will lose the general election the day after the primary, because that's what will happen, Larry. And I'm more convinced than ever that on August 3rd, the barrage of negative ads that either flip-flopping or her discriminatory verdicts, whatever the issues are, those ads are ready to go against her on August 3rd.
Point. So you're the only Latino candidate running for governor. Latinos account for 32% of the Arizona residents and 24% standing by themselves as the state's voting population. Do you think you can rally Latinos behind your campaign and take the lead in the primary?
Yeah, so look, I think it's going to be about Latinos and minority diverse communities, Larry. The reality is that we know about 500,000 Latinos came out and voted for President Biden, about 91,000 African Americans, about 64,000 Native Americans, about 60,000 Asian Americans here in our state. That's kind of the diverse makeup of our electorate. And because the margins are so slim, Larry, President Biden, as you know, won with 10,457 votes. If any one of those communities would have stayed out, if rural Arizona would have stayed out, we would have Donald Trump today as president. And so building that coalition is key. And in the case of to your point, this is why I'm excited about the work that Latino Victory Fund and Chicanos por la Causa are doing. You know, for the first time in a primary, Chicanos por la Causa, CPLC, is investing $10 million to do the work of getting out Latino votes. They're going to be walking and talking to 300,000 homes between now and the primary to get Latinos out to vote. Because what I'm very clear about, and what I sense as I go talk to voters every day, Larry, and I tell them this, for the last 3 cycles, we've asked our communities to come out and vote against something. We've asked them to come out and vote here in Maricopa County against Joe Arpaio. We've asked them to vote statewide against Jan Brewer and her hateful SB 1070 that targeted Latino communities throughout our state. We've asked them to come out and vote against Donald Trump, and they've responded. In each one of those times, they have responded. And so the difference now is we've got to ask them to vote for something. We've got to excite them to come out and be part of a movement to start changing politics. If we're so fed up with how divided politics is, the only way that we bring them together is to talk about their vision, what's in it for them, on education, on healthcare, on jobs, on housing, on water, on reproductive freedoms, on making sure that we get guns out of the streets and keep our kids safe. Those are all the tough issues that they care about. And so this is an opportunity for them, for folks listening to us today, to vote for themselves, vote for their families. That's the choice that's on the ballot. It's not about me, Larry. It's about who's going to stand up and fight for them. That's what we can't forget as we go about the next 2 months in this race. So if you're not part of the conversation, you don't deserve the people's vote. Bottom line.
Related to that question, I wanted to ask you about how to attract what Democrats can do to attract more young people to the party and also get them out to vote. There's a statistic I found that said fewer than 15% of people who are age 18 are even registered to vote, 15%.
Mm-hmm.
How can we engage young people? They're the future, you know, at my age, pretty soon I'm going to be the past.
Well, look, Larry, I remember my first campaign was a Board of Supervisors campaign down in Santa Cruz County, Bobby Damon's campaign. And then it was Congressman Pastor when he was running for office. And you know what did it for me when I was 14 is a simple act of being asked, is being included, having the feeling that you're welcome and they want to hear from you. And so that's why, as I go to community college campuses, high schools, and the university campuses and work with our young organizers, I bring them in and make them part of the conversations that we're having, not just out in the field canvassing. No, we have to bring them into that fold so that they understand and they appreciate what it's like to be part of a movement, part of a party that thinks about people first. So that's what is key to the work that we've got to do, Larry, is our young folks really are smart. Their issues are unique. They bring to the table different points of view as it relates to how they see the world in the next 50 years. A world that today we are not taking care of through our environmental policies. A world where today the jobs that exist might not be an environment where they will work at for 25 years, as in the past, you have a job and you keep it until you retire. It's very dynamic. So I only say that because we don't have all the answers. Look, I'm 44 and I'm surrounded by a young staff and a group of volunteers with a lot of energy. But what they tell me is we appreciate being heard. We appreciate being part of the conversations from very early on. So that's how we encourage young kids and college Dems and high school Dems. I was talking to a few organizers last week when we were kicking off a canvas. They're targeting high schools of kids that are turning 18 and registering them and getting them involved. That's how we do it, Larry, because you're right. Look, I go to so many of these legislative district meetings throughout the state. And you won't be surprised about this, right? We needed a lot more young people there. And so we've got to be encouraging it and bringing them in every single opportunity that we have.
Very good. I couldn't agree more. Speaking about an issue that's of major concern to young people, I wanted to bring up climate change, because young people today are going to be living through whatever's going to happen after 2050, no water, relentless heat, wildfires, and so forth. And I noticed that you were a trustee, or you are a trustee on the Arizona Nature Conservancy. Correct. And I was wondering, is there a specific climate change remedy that you support? For example, one thing I hear a lot about is the carbon and tax dividend. Is that something you think is a good approach, or how would you fight climate change?
Yeah, so look, I think you're right, and many of our young people and many of our retirees see it, right? The crisis that we're in, whether it be our 21-year drought, our air quality, our streams, like down south, the San Pedro, or up north, the Verde River, the Verde River. The issue is our ecosystem is hurting. And so one of the things that I've been fortunate as part of being on the Nature Conservancy is really taking a holistic approach of how we begin to solve for the next 50 years or remedy for the next 50 years. So for example, up north in northern Arizona, working with our tribes and Coconino County specifically as well, we understand that we have a huge challenge with the thinning of our forests. A healthy forest has about 60 trees, 60 to 100 trees per acre. Many of our acres up north have 1,500 trees. So this is how you see these 200, 300,000 acre fires develop. So we've got to work together between the state and the federal government to do more of the thinning so that the snow melt, the secondary outside of our wildfires, it's the snow melt that isn't allowing the runoff to fill our streams, our lakes, and our rivers to the full capacity. And so that work and that watershed impacts down south, Tucson, Pinal, for sure here in Maricopa. And so it's an understanding that we have to take a holistic approach. That's why I'm prepared to call together the leaders of our Native American communities, agriculture, our developers. You know, cities are to blame for this. The incentive for cities is to continue to grow. And so we've got to bring those city planners so that smart growth and tactics for our care of our water is taken into account as they look at the next 50 years of growth in each one of our communities, including all of them in Pima County. And so that's the appreciation, Larry. It is a crisis. We have until 2026. Not a lot of time to work on our groundwater management agreement as it relates to the Colorado River. So I'm prepared to do that. I'm going to do that. And we're going to start bringing, again, into our conversations, young people. This is why our cabinet is going to be diverse, not only in geography, but in age as well. So inviting and bringing our young activists to the table so that they can help be part of the solution, because that's who we're going to hand this off to.
All right, let's take a few questions from the audience that are coming in the Q&A. John asks, given your experience, how do we create a fair, safe, and humane immigration policy with the federal government while featuring the benefits of being a border state?
This is a great question, and I really do look at this in a couple ways. First, we have to make sure that we are delivering on the citizenship promise to our dreamers, to our DACA recipients. Second, to their families, giving them a pathway to legalization, because we understand that just like their kids, they have been here for many, many years, and they deserve a level of comfort of knowing that they're safe and secure as part of our fabric. Third, and this is, I think, key, is we've got to push for a sensible processing of new immigrants to America. This is one of the biggest frustrations that we've had for almost 20 years now. The visa process, the process by which people come here to be part of our economy, is broken. It continues to be broken. And so because it is broken, it is easier for them to be hit up by smugglers, coyotes, to go around the system. And so we've got to reform and fix the legal system so that everyone, the majority, 99% of the people choose to come here and would rather do it legally, Larry. They want to be part of our economy. We are a welcoming country. We are a welcoming state. We need to stay that way, but it means that we have to push the federal government, because that is the purview for the visa system and the processing and adjudication of visas. Our economy needs them. We have over 10 million job vacancies today in America, many of them in agriculture, in industries, in hospitality, in manufacturing, in many of the industries that we know immigrants want to come and work on. And so we need to fix the process so that they can do that. The other thing is, this is the economy. This is really an economic question as well. Today, we can't compete with Texas. Texas has about a million person employee relationship as it relates to the border. They have 28 ports of entry. We in Arizona have 3 ports of entry. Those create about 180,000 jobs. It's about a $15 billion economic impact to our state. If you compare the economy south of Texas in Mexico to ours, south of Arizona into Mexico, those numbers should actually be closer to 300,000 jobs created by trade with Mexico, but we cannot do it with 3 ports. So as we reimagine our relationship with Mexico, as it relates to immigration, as it relates to manufacturing, with companies looking to come back from Asia to be closer to the supply chain here in America, we have a great opportunity to compete, but we cannot do it with the same 3-port infrastructure that we currently have. So that $15 billion impact, Larry, should be closer to $30 billion. And that means that we would be up to 300,000 jobs created because of smart, sensible trade, border reform, and visa reform. We can do that. We can do it on our own as a state on the infrastructure piece. We cannot do it on our own on the visa processing piece. So that's why we've got to have sensible leadership. I get so frustrated every time I see Doug Ducey go down to the border to sign that steel wall because those are tactics, right? And then I've seen Carrie Lake and Karen Taylor Robeson down there, Matt Salmon, with ridiculous proposals, but it certainly excites their base, but it actually gets us nothing. So we need leadership on either party. We need leadership that will have sensible solutions that we can work on together instead of dividing our state and dividing our country around this very touchy issue, very sensitive issue of immigration.
Yeah, my mother is an immigrant. She came over after World War II, and there was an immediate pathway for her to become a citizen. She's a naturalized citizen. What about establishing a pathway to citizenship for the dreamers and all the other people who would like to come to this country? Turn them into citizens who pay taxes.
That's right. This is why I started with that, because I myself understand the importance of that as a son of immigrants. My grandmother is 93 years old. She immigrated from Mexico herself. She's still down there in Nogales, just turned 93 actually. And so you're right, but we've got to push the federal government to do that. We were so close, Larry. Senator McCain, rest in peace, was a champion of bringing together that Gang of 8. Sadly, could never get that agreement out of the Senate. The Republicans never delivered the necessary votes to be able to do it. And so we cannot drop the ball. We've got to continue to push on the federal government. We have 2 Democratic senators here in Arizona, as you know. We've got to depend on them and rely on them and put pressure on them. Regardless of the fact that they're of our own party, we've got to put pressure on every elected official to get this solved for the dreamers, for their families, and then for the welcoming new immigrants that want to come here.
Thanks for answering that. Of course, I understand that the governor is not directly involved in creating a pathway to citizenship, but I just wanted to see where you were coming from.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the economy a little bit.
Sure.
Right now, Arizona is a right to work state, which is sort of a euphemism for we don't want any unions here. And so the wages that are paid in Arizona are probably lower than other parts of the country. What do you think you can do to overturn this right to work law and grow the economy here in Arizona?
It's a great question. I released our priorities for how we work with our labor organization so that we can get to a place that we lift the right to work status here in Arizona. It's a heavy lift. It's a multi-year lift, but we've got to start in areas in government that we know we can impact. And that is the first and foremost is making sure that we are ourselves paying our state workers an equitable and fair wage, health benefits, something like what I did when I was mayor. In a job classification and salary compensation study. I've committed to doing that in the first 180 days of our administration. when we begin next year with everyone's support, of course, on this call. It's those types of things that will help us assure that we're paying people fairly for the work that they are performing so that they feel that they're part of and respected by our state leadership. And then, Larry, to your point, making sure that we make it hospitable, a welcoming state for labor organizations to organize. Something like what I did after so many years, the CWA had been trying to put in place in Nogales a meet and confer agreement. I did that when I was mayor because I believed in the power of our working families. That's what it's about, Larry. I really do think about the work that many of our labor brothers and sisters are out there performing. It's got to be fair. They have to have the opportunity to collect, to come together, to organize, and then to bargain for those wages, those benefits in a fair, transparent, and open manner. This is why I'm excited to have the support of labor, as you can see on the screen, from IBEW, AFGE, IATSE, and we continue to have conversations with many more, because this is how we begin to change that dynamic in our state, Larry. I'm very clear with our labor friends, brothers and sisters. This is a heavy lift, but we need a champion that is willing to take that fight on together with them. It'll take time, but we've got to start moving in that direction, because what we also know is that states that have and allow for unionization and collective bargaining and standards, labor standards, those states and those families are better off. And those economies eventually, as you can see the studies show, are stronger. And so that's what we've got to do. We've got to pay people their fair wage. We've got to let everyone succeed. We've got to lift that middle class, Larry, because otherwise we're not going to be a place, we're not going to be a state that people want to come to. I'm telling you, as we're trying to bring companies to our project out in Mesa, we had a big aerospace company come. They brought all of their executive leadership from Savannah, Georgia. You know what happened? They looked at our school ratings. They looked at our educational investments, and they said, nope. So they ended up going to John Wayne Airport in California. That's what we miss out on. And so we've got to protect our middle class. We've got to protect our workers. We've got to give them the opportunity to organize and unionize.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've been a union member since I was 27 and worked on the New York Daily News. And the pay was much better. The benefits were much better. You know, all the good things that you get with a union. And, you know, the legislature has just made it really tough for unions to organize in the state.
Right.
You talked a little bit about education, and I know that you released a $2.5 billion increase in investments for education program that were involved, apprenticeships and vocational training. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm so excited about this, Larry, because, you know, I talked a little bit about moments of crisis. And in education, we are in that moment of crisis. And people across this state agree, whether it be educators, parents, kids, everyone agrees that education is in a state of disrepair, in a state of crisis. I mean, they use all these words, and then they don't go fund it. Then they try to put Band-Aids on everything to hold it together. This is why we released a $2.5 billion education first plan that calls on the legislature and this governor to use the resources available, the surplus, and begin to lead us into that direction of actually repairing and fixing our education system. So it calls for $1 billion in teacher pay, reducing class size, investing in our classrooms so that they have the tools to succeed. But it also talks about early childhood development. You know, so many people talk about closing the gap. What about not having a gap that we have to close? That means that we've got to start with our 3-year-olds and make sure that also parents have access to childcare so that they can provide a safe environment for their child to learn while they're out working and their child is getting prepared. And then finally, investing. One of the things you asked me about these school shootings earlier. One of the things that I am really focused on as part of this budget, $650 million worth of that investment, is making sure that our schools have access to counselors, mental health providers, but also that our curriculum, our social engagement curriculum, is properly embedded so that kids understand how to express themselves, how to seek help within the safe environment of our schools. I remember down in Nogales, Lincoln School was my elementary school. And I remember every day I would walk to school from my parents' house where they still live. And I knew along that trajectory, about half a mile, where the teachers lived, where the first responders lived, where the janitors lived, because this is a close-knit fabric that starts within our school system. And so today, this is part of our $150 million part of our Education First investment, is working so that ecosystem can once again start getting replenished, meaning that teachers should be able to live in the school districts that they work in. Today, we have so many educators that are working in a school district, but have to drive 30, 40 miles away because they can't afford to live where they work. We've got to start reducing those stresses, investing in our teachers, not only in salary, but making sure that they have access to affordable housing opportunities in the same school districts that they live, but also educational enrichment courses so that they can move up in their teaching profession. You know that today the average teacher spends only 3 years in the classroom before they decide that the pay isn't good, the health isn't good, they're not treated well. Back in the day, I remember it was my same second grade teacher, Mrs. Astorga, that was my sister's teacher 5 years before me. And so the teaching profession was such that they stayed as teachers for 25 years, Larry. And today, the average is 3 before they say, you know what, this is too much, no pay, no respect, and they move on to do something else. It's not that they're going to another teaching job, it's that they're leaving the profession. This is why we're investing $150 million to make sure that we're strengthening and working with our high school students to encourage them to become teachers without debt, so that those professions are properly both compensated and they don't have any debt that comes from it here if they stay and work here in Arizona. That's what it takes, Larry. It's an all-around solution, but you have to have, again, the vision to be able to do it, and then bring people together. All of this fighting is not going to help us achieve this goal. And finally, my dad was a plumber by trade, and this is why you have and you see our investments, about $150 million investments in vocational training and certification programs. Because although I went to the University of Arizona and that worked well for me, for far too many kids, that's not the path they want to take, nor should it be the path that we force them to take. So we have to invest in vocational training so that they do have the skills to succeed. So all in all, Larry, the vision is that every child in Arizona will be prepared to graduate from high school, dual credential, their high school diploma and their associate's degree in one of the economic areas that we know our state is going to grow in: hospitality, healthcare, or technology. That's the vision. And those resources and that investment helps build towards that, so that by the 8th year in office, that becomes a reality for every school district, for every child, regardless of what zip code they live in, what community they grow up in. It should not matter. Each one of our 15 counties and 22 tribes should have excellent schools where our kids know that when they leave, when they're done, when they graduate, they will have the skills to succeed in a state that welcomes their skill set, and they can live and grow their families right here in Arizona. This is a state that we all love. Why should people have to leave to find a better access to education or a job? No, I believe in this state. This is why I'm running for governor.
Okay. Talking a little bit more in detail about education, our audience member Mel asks if you would describe what your budget would look like that you would propose as governor, and how would you assign the funds to health and welfare, higher education, K through 12, and should we have changes in the top marginal tax rate?
So part of this is $2.5 billion budget above and beyond what is currently being invested in our education system. Today, we have about a $5.3 billion surplus at a 4.5 top tax bracket income for income tax. And so my proposal calls for keeping it at 4.5%. And so we could have the investment. Today, we have an additional about $2.3 billion from federal monies that are one-time funds. So this is why our proposal calls for $2.5 billion, because at 4.5% tax, it is generating about a $3 billion surplus. So as you can see, Larry, the majority of our investment from surplus goes to education, because that's it. That's our future. And so what we commit to is making sure that those investments are priority in all of our budgeting. You can go on to marcolopez.com. The breakdown of our educational investments are on there. There's a tab that says policy, and you will find our Education First plan broken down right there.
So spend a minute or two on voting rights.
Yeah,
it's pretty obvious that the Republican strategy nationwide has been to run extreme candidates with the aim of primarily suppressing the minority vote, because the Republicans feel that, you know, if we let minorities vote, well, they'll vote for Democrats and won't vote for Republicans. And in general, trying to suppress the vote, because again, the Republicans know if few people vote, that favors the Republicans. What can we do to strengthen our voter rights here in Arizona? I mean, they're under a clear-cut attack by the Republican Party.
Yeah, so look, I think that we have to continue to push back against this. One of the things that we have right now ourselves that we can do is make sure that we register more people, we get more people focused and out to do it. But the reality is that it is their fear that people that look like me, like my parents, minorities throughout this state, young people, Native Americans, our communities throughout our state are not voting for the radical offer or options that the Republican Party is presenting. And so in order to limit it so that only their constituents are able to vote, we need to fight and push those and veto those measures. That's what we are able to do. And as governor, that's what I'm committed to doing, but also expanding so that you can have same-day voter registration, so that if you do want to vote, you missed every deadline, you can still do it on that same day. So we can expand the ease and not kick off voters that might have missed 1 or 2 cycles out of their vote by mail list, Pebble, for example. So it's making sure that in our Native American communities, in a lot of our retirement communities, it is easy to get a ballot to you, and you can deposit it in a safe and secure, close by location. So those are the things that we've got to fight and push for, Larry. But right now, as voters, we got to make sure that if we were gonna originally register 5 more people, that we actually double it and go register 10 and then get them out to vote so that we can push back. Again, this is why I keep saying it's not just about me. It's not about electing a governor candidate that works on behalf of Arizonans. It's about making sure that we elect candidates down ballot to our legislature so that we can get sensible bills passed to undo a lot of the damage that Republican, they're not done, by the way, Larry. They've already done enough damage, but they will continue to try to make it more and more difficult. We've got to stand up and we've got to make sure. And the use of last resort is putting an initiative back on the ballot if we have to protect our voting rights throughout the state. That's what I'm committed to do as well. If we need to codify it into our Arizona Constitution, I'm committed to doing that. I would hope that we wouldn't have to do that, that we could elect sensible people to try to get this done via the legislature. But if we don't, I'm not afraid of putting it back on the ballot and letting people decide the ease of which their elections or their right to vote should be exercised.
And the so there is, well, as you referenced, a voter rights initiative on the ballot, and there's also a ballot to stop dark money. Most of the attack ads and negative advertising you see are all paid for by anonymous donors. You know, they spend millions of dollars in the state and just pollute our airwaves with, you know, gratuitous attack ads. Tell me about what your response would be on that. How can we get the dark money initiative passed?
Yeah, and I'm supportive of those initiatives. I've met a couple of times with Terry Goddard, who, you know, is once again pushing, and hopefully we're going to get it passed this time around. But this speaks to the same point that I think your previous question referenced. They know that they have resources. Mitch McConnell, for example, is going to spend $100 million to try to unseat Mark Kelly. And a lot of that money is going to be via donors who are unknown and are going to run a lot of those negative attack ads. So we do need to limit it. The reality is that the playing field is not fair. And so we've got to make sure that we get it on the ballot. I think he's got about another month of signature gathering. And then we got to go promote it and pass it. It's key, again, because the Republicans are so focused and understanding that this is it. Once they lose control here, all right? Once they lose control of Arizona as a red state, then their map becomes more competitive nationally for who's going to get elected in 2024 to the presidency. That's what they're trying to avoid, Larry. And so we've got to be smart about this and understand their tactics every single day. This is what they wake up thinking. How can we limit the people who vote so that our people get ahead? And their people aren't getting any less radical. They're growing and growing more and more vicious, because that's who attracts that base that they need to hang on to.
Yeah, I look forward to the day when the Arizona government is not run by Republicans trying to turn the clock back to 1958.
Yeah.
We've got a question here from John, one of our attendees, and he's asking about rural Arizona.
Yeah.
Marco, what are your priorities for rural Arizona, and how do you intend to reach rural voters?
Thank you, John. You know, this is one of the things that I've been really focused on from the beginning with our 15 county, 22 tribe strategy, because every person and every vote and every Arizonan matters. And so aside from personally engaging in conversations and in meetings in each one of our rural communities, it's about understanding that once we are in office, with your help, John, that we also deliver on the promise of jobs, quality education, good healthcare in a lot of our rural communities. Like, you know, to use a few examples throughout the state, many don't have access to a quality healthcare provider. So they have to drive 50, 60, 70 miles away. And so it's being cognizant of the fact that a responsive government delivers services to each one of our 15 counties and 22 tribes, but jobs. So one of the things that I had focused on when I was at the Department of Commerce was how we could continue to promote job growth and economic investments in our rural communities so that they had access to good quality paying jobs. Rural Arizona is a great place to live. I'm a product of it myself. And so we need to, you know, many of our communities need to have that economic investment. State government has a huge role to play there. The easier stories and the easier successes from an economic development standpoint are always going to be in the bigger cities, Tucson, Phoenix, Mesa, like these bigger cities, right? But because rural investments are much more difficult. So we've got to be hyper-focused on how we have teams in place throughout our state to attract, to recruit, to grow, to provide small business loans so that our small communities can thrive throughout rural Arizona. It's just in my DNA. I love working on some of those more difficult tasks. And so I will make sure that we have teams in place, John, that are actively working in rural Arizona, because that's what made Arizona beautiful and great. It's the beginnings, the early beginnings of our rural communities. I was out in Prescott last week, went and visited, of course, the courthouse, the first capital of our state. And it was just a reminder, right? It's a reminder that rural Arizona has a lot to offer. And so you've got my commitment with that. And in the meantime, from an election standpoint, it's continuing to reach out, to be present in each one of these places that we love, that many of us have called home or still call home.
Okay, we're getting a little bit low on time, but I want to ask a question that our attendee Martin has posed, and it's focusing on water.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to know how you will balance the water demands between agriculture and the cities. As you state on your campaign site, agriculture makes up $23 billion of Arizona's economy. However, it is also the biggest consumer of the most scarce resource, and that is water. How would you deal with that?
Yeah, so in our negotiations for the 2026 water compact, we have to make sure that agriculture is appropriately represented, but also our cities, our city planners, because sometimes their incentives for the cities are backwards. Their incentive is to grow. That also puts a greater strain on our water resources, and same for agriculture. As more and more resources are needed to feed America and to feed our state, agriculture continues to be an industry in big demand. So we've got to work with them. Was it John who asked that? I'm sorry. Martin. So Martin, we've got to continue. We've got to work with agricultural interests and find that fine line, because the reality is that either through smarter use of water, or in some areas of our state up north in Mojave County specifically, where agriculture is being grown and then shipped out, sent to Saudi Arabia, we've got to really think about how those resources are not benefiting Arizonans, and we have to have those tough conversations with those city planners so that we can limit and do away with that type of, that's just a gross use and exploitation of our water resources that don't benefit Arizonans, but they also don't benefit the country, the United States. So that's clear in my mind that's a part of our negotiation team and folks that are going to be around the table, Martin, because we only have it once. And the other point that I would make on that is desalinization as it relates to the offset that we could get from Mexico. It's about a 1.2 million acre feet of water that by working with the Mexican federal government, that I have experience negotiating international treaties when I was at Homeland Security with President Obama, negotiating an expansion of their desal in Baja and then off the coast in California to offset their take of the Colorado River water, I think is a viable discussion. Sadly, it's long-term, but it's something that we do need to discuss and also make sure that it is environmentally sound, because we don't want to cause environmental issues for the, I think Jacques Cousteau called it the aquarium of the world, Baja, the Baja Peninsula, the Sea of Cortez, that many of our Arizonans enjoy when they go to Rocky Point. So we don't want to impact that habitat negatively, but it's something definitely that we also have to consider.
All right, Marco, I regret to say that we're out of time.
That was quick.
There are still questions, and I have pages and pages of more questions to ask you, but I was wondering if you would be so kind as to sort of bring the program to a conclusion and tell us, how do we contact you? How can we learn more about you? And what can people do if they want to volunteer and donate to your campaign?
Thank you, Larry. So in order to restore the promise of Arizona that I've been fortunate to speak to all of you over the course of the last hour, it takes everyone. If we believe that Arizona is a place that is going to be that beacon throughout the Southwest where people want to continue to come to and thrive, if we're going to invest in education so that our kids and our future generations have the opportunities and the skills to succeed, if we're going to close the gap on healthcare so that everyone has access to an affordable quality healthcare option, if we're going to invest and grow our economy, especially during tough times that might be ahead, we have to have someone with the experience and the knowledge to be able to tackle those challenges. My experience at the local, state, and federal government level, and my executive experience in creating jobs in our economy is exactly what is required for Democrats to win against the hate-ridden campaigns that we're going to have and that we already see on the Republican side. So I ask you to join us at marcolopez.com to volunteer, to contribute, or simply to ask your question. I'm accessible to you. That's the type of governor that I will be on your behalf, because I am very clear that I work for you. I am asking for your vote so that I can work for you. That's how democracy should work. And if we take it for granted, if we take this opportunity for granted, thinking that we don't have to be responsive to our citizens, well, folks, friends, we already have a senator that does that. We don't need another politician in Arizona that gets elected and then doesn't work for you, then forgets about who they work for. So join me at marcolopez.com. Larry, thank you so much for the conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I enjoy every time I go down to Tucson. It's interesting because I try to leave a little bit of time, at least 15 to 20 minutes earlier, so that I can go down to the U of A and go visit the campus, go visit the bookstore, and then I walk out to the mall and I see a lot of the construction. It's still home for me, and it means a lot to be present with you. And thanks for the work that you all do, Pima County Dems, because we do need to get more people excited, more people engaged in the work that we're doing. Thank you so much. God bless you. And please join this movement, marcolopez.com.
Well, you're more than welcome, and best of luck on the campaign trail. And with that, thank you very much, Marco. And I'm going to bring the program to a close. So we'll see you on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.